Stippling is generally considered to be an easy and fast way to blend on your minis, at least faster than glazing. But what if I told you that there is a stippling approach that no one really breaks down and explains that could turn you into a blending god? On this video, I'm gonna tell you the best and more effective way to stipple, break down every single step, and how you can use this to blend literally anything, as long as you respect one big rule. What is stippling? Stippling is a painting technique that consists in building a gradient using overlapping dots. Technically, in miniature painting, most of the times these dots are not as much dots as more like marks, slightly muted, irregular, and unhinged dots. And this change is what's killing your brushes. You're stabbing the hell out of that cape, please. Stop! Well, there's a way to actually not totally kill your brush while stippling, but first we need to talk about consistency. As I was doing research for this video, I saw that people, when explaining stippling, they kinda used a slightly thinned down consistency, which I would call a strong glaze consistency. This allows you to be kinda sloppier in the application. Because of that slightly thinner consistency, the mark you're gonna make is not gonna be as defined as you were to use like a base coat consistency, for example. But what if I told you there's a better way to do it? And most importantly, a faster way to do it. So first off, I'm gonna start base coating the cape using burnt umber from AK, which is also gonna be my shadow color. When that's dry, I'm gonna start mixing in a 2:1 ratio burnt umber and buff, also from AK, and apply this mix to the areas where the light hits. At this point, anyone else would say, stipple in. But how? Where should I start from? How many dots should I paint? And how much space should I cover? These are all good questions that are kind of left unanswered in most other videos. But I'm gonna break it down in 3 simple steps. Even a blind chimp could do it. I'm gonna take the same color that I used for the highlights, so the 2:1 mix burnt umber to buff, and I start applying little dots, not very close together and in a random pattern, not following lines or shit like that. The consistency is the same that we use for sketching the highlights. And with the right base coat consistency, this won't create any texture. Because we are slightly more delicate with our brushstroke, not stabbing crazily the surface but lightly tapping it, we're not gonna ruin our brush as much. Here you can really be more or less precise. As you can see, I don't paint really precise dots, but more irregulars, almost like little lines. Like I said, this won't damage as much the brush, but still the point must be pressed down a bit to create that pattern line-like. You kind of need a point for that, and brushes will get ruined pretty much with anything you do, so this is also a fantastic exercise of brush control and consistency. Sure, it's not as fast as stepping the surface like your Christian Bale on American Psycho, but still it can be pretty fast as long as you're controlling the brush the right way. Now let's move on to step 2. Taking the same mix, this time I will focus my dots on the edges where the 2 layers meet. Here's another big example on how brush control and consistency are deeply connected. As you saw in step 1, I can keep stippling on the surface for like 1 minute straight without reloading the brush. That's because I nailed the base coat consistency I need to use for this process. The problem is that most people have a hard time recognizing different types of consistency. But newsflash, it's not your fault. Most of the times it's just generally overlooked and not broken down and explained properly. And it's the same thing with brush control. You gotta have the right pressure and hold the brush properly in order to go to a faster pace like I'm doing right now. It's really hard to go in depth on this topic here on YouTube, but don't worry, I got you covered with my brand new painting course. It's not just gonna break down every single brush movement that most other creators take for granted, but also it's gonna transform you into a consistency god. And whatever paint you use, whatever weather, you're gonna be able to find the right consistency every single time. So if you wanna support the channel, improve your painting, and allow me to not put those annoying sponsorship in my videos, click the link down below and check it out, please. Okay, now you have boo-hoo, a pretty ugly thing. You gotta trust the process. This is the step that's gonna make the effect look actually realistic. And it's gonna make it look like you put more effort than you actually did, which I love that. In order to understand that, you need to imagine the surface being divided in 3 parts. I'm gonna start extending the dots in the other areas of the cape as well. And to know how to do that, the 3 areas come into play. The first part is where the 2 layers meet, and here is where you need to focus most of your dots. The goal is to get rid of the edge completely, even extending the highlight area a bit with stippling. The second part on the other end is gonna be our shadow area, where the dots are gonna be, well, less but still present. And finally, the third part is gonna be our middle tone. Here the dots are more than in the shadow area, but at the same time not as much as in the highlight area. So like middle ground or something. And from here you can decide to paint in another flat highlight layer and do the exact same process until you are satisfied or you reach the desired effect. It can go on forever. All I did was combining stippling with another well-known technique that allows me to have a guide for where I have to place my dots. When I first tried dotting on Israel cape, I was a bit confused, to be honest. And after hours of testing, I came up with the step-by-step method that actually makes it pretty simple. I just combined flat layers of paint with stippling, blending in those edges. And from the first layer, you can go on and add more layers, covering less and less surface. Just keep in mind that when you apply your flat layer, the highlight area is gonna end up a little bit larger than that because of the dots you're gonna add where the first layer and the base coat meet, extending the highlight area. On this cape, I actually changed the light distribution at some point because it didn't quite click for me. You can't quite tell. So I can confirm that this does not leave visible texture if you're using base coat consistency. The truth is that most of the times advanced techniques aren't that hard to understand. The problem is when you know how to do it, it's kind of hard to break them down and explain them well enough for other people to understand. But luckily for you, my goal for this channel is to break down every single step in every single technique, new, old, created, made up, who knows, in easy and simple steps. For the final highlight, I don't paint the flat layer, I just directly stipple in, mainly because of the size of the surface that's so small. With this method, you can paint literally anything that you want, adding a bit of noise and interest to your models. But you need to follow one rule. If everything on the model has the same exact finish, whether it's smooth or texture, your eyes are gonna melt in your socket. So whatever you do, you gotta add variety to how you paint your model, because otherwise it's gonna look weird and kind of unpleasant. And for the love of the emperor, never, I said never use only stippling. Please, please alternate. But in order to do that, you kind of need to combine your stippling with some other technique that gets you a smoother finish. Watch this video here and you'll see how it's actually pretty easy to paint creamy blends using this type of glazing. And I'll see you there, or you'll see past me there. I